What up, friends? But where? And today we're going to be reviewing Vampire Weekend's newest album, Only God Was Above Us. Only God Was Above Us is the fifth studio album by American indie rock band Vampire Weekend. Now I'm going to be honest, I was pretty unfamiliar with this band before this project, actually. I've heard the name, of course, just because they were one of the sort of indie rock darlings of the late 2000s and early 2010s, and I'm sure I've heard a single here and there, but that was kind of the extent of my knowledge. Since then, I have gone back and listened to albums like the self-titled, however, even without listening to the other albums in their discography, even without seeing how much of an evolution that this album is, it is a really solid record. The way the sounds blend together, the uniqueness of the vocals, and how they mix with the instrumentals, there is not really any other band like them, both back then and today. While there might be a few lulls from an instrumental standpoint on this project, the overall maximalism and the energy and vibe that they create on this project is just out of this world. The album starts off with Ice Cream Piano, and what a fucking intro. The vocals mix with that scratchy guitar before we get into that booming, bombastic sort of combo of piano, guitars, drums. It's unmatched. The energy of this track is fantastic, and it also sort of reinforces the lyrics as well, being about a youth movement, descendants of vampires who are trying to rectify the blood-sucking ways of their ancestors. This is actually a pretty common theme of the project as a whole, and combined with the excellent piano playing on here, we're in for a treat. Those triumphant strings in the outro too, come on! Next up we have Classical, and the drums on this track are actually fucking insane. It's so punchy and clean, and combined with the pining strings and guitar, it's beautiful. The vocals and flows are so delicate yet so captivating, and I'm also really digging the use of both the acoustic and the electric guitar here. We can't forget about the bass either, because that just sort of adds to the magical period drama-like vibe that this track has. The lyrics are also great, describing and lamenting about how cruel the passage of time is and how history is written by the winners. It's also calling to avoid this sort of violence in younger generations. I'm also really digging the haunting undertones of this track, describing how even if these societies were built by the strong in the past, they too are inevitably doomed to crumble and make way for the future generations. It's one of the best songs on the album, for real. Capricorn sees the album slowing down to a more low-key and dreamy vibe. Ironically, the song also uses its light piano passages and rhythmic drums to describe getting old. It paints a picture of people who were happy when they were younger, having God on their side, and now they're kind of grizzled and have to figure out who they really are. They're trying to sift through life. However, I do like the sort of optimistic twinge that this track has, basically saying alone and wounded, but in my prime. I'm also really appreciating the reflection that's displayed in the third verse, as they're basically saying that what worked for previous generations just does not work for the current generation anymore. I am loving the piano passages on Connect, especially as the drums sort of build as the track progresses. The pacing is punchy and driving, making it pretty unique for the project as a whole. The background vocals are haunting, and I'm loving the transition between the different vocal styles from the verses and then a different one as we approach the chorus. It's a bit moodier during the verses, then we get a bit more upbeat as that chorus approaches. Like the last song, it also depicts a sort of melancholic struggle of someone who wants to reconnect with the past despite it not really helping them live in the present. Prep School Gangsters is more in line with songs from their self-titled, especially with those quirky guitar passages, which honestly kind of makes it feel a bit simplistic compared to a lot of stuff that's going on the record. It's not a bad track, but it doesn't feel as satisfying compared to the maximalism on display with the other songs on the record. Despite this though, I really like the lyrical angle on this song, basically describing people from wealthy families being just unaware of the struggles that normal people go through. These privileged people and their privileged kids often form these sort of cliques of gangsters that basically go around and harassing people just for being different or less fortunate. I'm also really liking how they're tackling basically these innocuous comments that many people don't even think of what they're saying as wrong or whatever, but how they can actually be harmful, like catcalling or using slurs in figures of speech or whatever. My only gripe is that the song is a little bit boring to listen to when delivering these messages. However, next up we got The Surfer, and we're slowing it down a little bit, but this one is a vibe, man. I know I'm a hypocrite, it's not super maximalist like I said I really enjoyed on the other songs on the project, but I think this song just really fits for what it is. It's really engaging in its own way, and I think the instrumental is very hypnotic. The vocals are super melancholic over this instrumental, and I think the horn segment especially really encapsulates how this song is very bittersweet. It has this tint of like bittersweet nostalgia to it. It's about this sort of washed up surfer who is basically clinging on to the life that he knows as he watches the world basically move on without him. And like those strings, when they come in, they are hauntingly beautiful. It really just describes the struggles of making ends meet with this surfer trying a bunch of different jobs and failing, and after all this, he's basically resorting to looking back on his glory days. It is real, it's just so peak, despite being so melancholic. On Gen X Cops, that opening guitar is just electric, bro. Before we go back to the more like low-key vibe of Connect, weirdly enough. It is crazy, but somehow it really works. From a lyrical angle, this song really feels like the band expressing their frustrations and how different generations interact with each other. The background vocals and main vocals are smooth, the drums provide a very crunchy backbone, and that piano is slick as hell, as usual. Like on the entire record, the piano is so delicate, yet so powerful. Like, how the hell do they do it? That chorus is just fantastic, especially with how all the song's elements just swell at the end, and also how it culminates with the line, "Each generation makes its own apology." The line, "The curtain drops, a gang of Gen X cops assembles, trembling before our human nature," is also fantastic, and really just describes how every generation seems to bitch about the one that came. And they do so without even trying to understand how the world that the newer generation lives in is so unlike the one that the older generations grew up in. Like, they're bitching about something that they don't even understand. All of this as well without even trying to connect with the people of these newer generations and what they're going through, what they like, what they dislike, all of it. It's one of the best songs on the record, for sure. Mary Boone goes back to the delicate vibes of some of the other songs on the record with this sort of choir and a very delicate synth and bass section. The vocals feel like a pining love letter of some kind before that beat just comes in and sweeps you off your feet. It almost seems like it has a bit of a hip-hop inspiration to it, which I think is a pretty cool change of pace for the project, but it also fits the lighter vibe of this track as a whole. The piano also just adds to these lyrics that are describing how people often tend to prefer the artist's art over the artist themselves. They're kind of comparing it to Mary Boone's art collection and how they hope that people can appreciate the artist just as much as the work that they create. Pravda is probably the only other weak track I can say aside from Prep School Gangsters, even if neither of them are actually bad. The instrumental is a bit repetitive in its synth passages and drum beats, but the song does actually pick up here and there too. While the guitar melodies can be pretty fun, the song largely feels stagnant, kind of staying in one place throughout its runtime. This makes it a bit less interesting than it would be otherwise, however I do appreciate it from a lyrical angle, talking about this sort of like war in your mind vibe and also adding to the themes of intergenerational conflict. Hope is the last song on the album, and a very fitting end, I think. A very moody and melancholic beat and guitar mesh with these piano passages that give off a feeling of exhaustion. The lyrics also match this, describing various moral failures in our society. These range from very wealthy people feeling like they're above the law, fear and conspiracy theories polluting the minds of the average person, forever wars raging away in other countries that we clearly have no intention in stopping, and, even people feeling like their institutions have failed them because they have done nothing to actually make the lives of regular people better. The vocals, of course, really add to these themes, both representing the internal and external wars that we are all dealing with, and just adding to the sort of intergenerational conflict themes of the project. I'm also really digging those horn segments that come in too that just ram these points home. What an album, man. Like, I knew that Vampire Weekend were pretty good just by the praises that everybody sings for them, even on their older works, but this is on another level. The album is consistent yet varied. The lyrics show really interesting themes and very interesting ways in expressing them, and I think Ezra's vocals have gotten way better since their debut album. The maximalist production style was also perfect for the instrumental style that they were going for and the themes that the album was discussing. It makes for a very memorable sound, and I'm also really loving how many influences this album has and how different they are compared to their previous work. While there were like one or two instrumental lulls on songs like Prep School Gangsters and Pravda, they still fit the record and they were still pretty good. Like, these guys should be proud. This album is fantastic. I'm feeling a strong 9, to be honest, on this newest album by Vampire Weekend. Of course, we do still have to talk about album covers on this show, and this album cover is also really cool. I think it really fits this sort of like modern life theming that the album is going for. It has a ton of grays. It's sort of this like subway image. However, it has like bits and pieces of other colors too. You know, the newspaper is like a really cool and clever sort of like visual theming that also expresses the themes of the record. It's so funny because like this album cover is, just like the record, very maximalist yet cohesive. They somehow managed to translate their production style and instrumental style to their album cover as well. So I think this album cover is great and fits the project perfectly. But of course, those are just my thoughts on this newest album by Vampire Weekend. What did you guys think about it? Do you agree that this was just a step above everything that they've done before? This is them taking their sound to the next level? Or were you kind of missing the quirkier edge and sound that they had on some of their previous works? Let me know. Be sure to like, comment, subscribe, ring the bell if you want me to be above you. Let's go with that. And until the next one, farewell.